I wanted to give folks an opportunity to push their material generation, in this case our landscape texture generation, to a further level of fantasy through the introduction of emissive materials. So what I've got here is a landscape with various pockets that are emitting light, projecting light through into the scene. And right now we're rendering in cycles, but we're going to switch to Evee, and you can see still, if I move this object around, how that landscape is shining light onto this subject. To show you a little bit more, I'm going to switch back into cycles to show you when I turn down in our world settings our HDRI lighting, that light is just coming from the emissive material. If I go to the shading tab, I'll switch back to cycles, and now that we're in the shading tab, we can play with the emission strength of our landscape material. See, I can turn this down all the way so there's no light in the scene. Bring it up slightly. Maybe even bring it so far it becomes like daylight itself. And I'll go back to my world settings, and I'll bring this back up, and we can see that kind of more natural light balance back in. Now I'm actually going to recommend you render in Evee. It's going to be easier on most computers and keep this an accessible project. But in Evee, you're going to have one more step to do, and that is baking your reflection captures. And I have these hidden away in a folder. You can see they're distributed around this tiled landscape. So you notice in Evee, if I change the emission strength of something, it's going to change on the material, but not a lot's happening in our scene. This ball is not being changed. If I turn it off, okay, nothing has really happened. What you have to do is you have to rebake your cube map. So if you're not in the rendering settings, you want to click here and come down and find where it says indirect lighting, open that up and click bake cube map. Now not a lot's changed here, but let's bring this back up to something quite high and rebake that cube map. We should see now we've got our reflections being cast onto our objects. If I turn that emission back down to 0, we're kind of left with this light, but not the source of the light. And that's what's so amazing about emissive shaders, is that they really do motivate the light sources of your scene. I'm going to rebake this, and we're going to see that go away. Okay, so what else is going on in this template file? We've got our HDRI that you can toggle or adjust on the slider here in the world settings. And if we go under Modifiers with our landscape plane selected, we can see that we've got, I'm going to go just into shaded mode here. We've actually got 4 tiles of the same landscape. And that is here just to help you visualize any potential seams or issues you might be having with tiling. If your computer is struggling to run this template with this Subdivision surface modifier on, you can definitely turn it off and live with it. It's not so bad. It gives you a pretty good idea from most angles. I'm going to turn that back on. And then we've got our kind of object here just to kind of show reflections around the general light source in the scene, but also from our landscape if we have any emission. So I'm going to scroll out here, and in the shaders tab, I've got this material set up on our landscape, terrain material. And all you'll need to do is come in here and select your own color, roughness, and normal maps, and those will plug into the various nodes and node points that they need to. And down here we do have our emissive map, which we're going to be generating ourselves. In this template, you also want to make note of your displacement map, which you can find here in the texture properties, where it says Heightmap here. You want to change this out to be your own texture map. I'll navigate to just another map, and you can see we can load in a completely different height map.